Hey, gang, it's time for a breakdown and an update. Breakdown, update. It's going to be a quickie today. I say that, but I have no idea what I'm about to say. So it might take a little longer, but here we go anyway. If you were here last Sunday, you know that it was an icy, foggy day. And so a lot of people stayed home and watched online. But I got actually really good feedback, some phone calls, some emails thanking me, I guess thanking Grace, not me, and specifically probably thanking Tanya Marley for continuing to stream our services so that when we have inclement weather, we can still show what we're doing here. And because I live close and I have a 4-wheel drive vehicle and I play guitar, chances are we'll always have a service open if you want to brave the inclement weather to be here on any given Sunday. Chances are we're going to be open. But stay safe. Thank you for those of you who did stay safe. And thank you to those of you who braved it and came and also still were safe. We had a good time. We continued our Elijah series. I got to cover 2 very long chapters. And that's been kind of the theme with these Elijah stories here at the end of First Kings. We're going to do a couple Elisha stories before the series is out in Second Kings. And they're all kind of longer passages. And so we kind of have to hustle through the text. And I would encourage you all, read and study these chapters on your own. They're fabulous stories. They're like movies. They're like just great narratives that you can get caught up in because there's a good guy and there's a bad guy and there's war and there's prophecies that then come true and there's showdowns. And like if somebody wanted to remake the Elijah, Ahab, Jezebel narrative, like as an old Western, like the old Clint Eastwood Westerns, The Man with No Name, with the poncho. Like I picture Elijah as Clint Eastwood in the poncho and the little cigarillo, and then here come the villains. So I guess would that be the good, the bad, and the, I don't know, what would Jezebel be? I don't want to say ugly. I don't know what she looked like. She was probably quite attractive and fetching, being that she was queen material. But I don't know, the good, bad, and Elijah, Ahab, and Jezebel. That would be a fun one. I would watch that. Anyhow, chapter 20, we didn't read together. We didn't really study together, but that's the story in First Kings of Ahab's victories over the attackers from Syria. Damascus is the capital city. So we've talked about this before. I just want to recap in case you missed it. I was talking with Carla here on staff, and she had missed this explanation. So just in case you have as well, the kingdom after Solomon of Israel, the kingdom of Israel. Saul, David, Solomon were the kings when it was one kingdom. After Solomon, his son, Rehoboam, decided he was going to be a big fat jerk, basically. And he was going to be mean to the people. And there was a big civil war, and the kingdom divided into 2. There was a northern kingdom that was made up of 10 of the 12 tribes. And that kingdom became known as Israel. And its capital city was the city of Samaria. The southern kingdom were the remaining 2 tribes, Judah and Benjamin, and that kingdom became known as Judah, and its capital city is Jerusalem. So, as you read through Chronicles and Kings, Samaria is mentioned a lot as a way to say the northern kingdom, because that's where the capital city was. So, if you're reading Chronicles and Kings and you see the word Samaria, it means the northern kingdom of Israel, because that's the capital city. If it says Jerusalem, it means the southern kingdom of Judah and also the city. So sometimes it says Israel, sometimes it says Samaria, sometimes it says Judah, sometimes it says Jerusalem. That's how it's set up in the way the Bible refers to it. Similarly, other nations that Israel or Judah go to war with are often referenced by their capital city as well. So the kingdom of Syria to the north of the northern kingdom of Israel, Syria, it's still Syria on current maps, north of Israel on current maps, but also back then, the capital city there was Damascus. And so there was Damascus and Syria are kind of one and the same in this narrative, which we saw with Ben-Hadad in chapter 20 of 1 Kings, that Ahab, the king of Israel, fought against Ben-Hadad, the king of Syria. But also in chapter 20, it references how Samaria went up against Damascus. So you can see why that could be confusing. We're going to run into Damascus in Syria again in one of Elisha's stories, a man named Naaman, who is a general in the Syrian army from Damascus. Got it? Good. Now, you might have heard of Samaria in the New Testament. That is not the capital city of the northern kingdom of Israel by then. It is a region where so here's some history. The northern kingdom was wiped out by the Assyrian Empire, not to be confused with Syria. The Assyrians, whose capital city was Nineveh, you might have heard of that, and Assyria wiped out the northern kingdom of Israel. They were done. And a lot of the prophets in your Old Testament are talking about that's about to happen, and it's not going to go well. The southern kingdom of Judah and its capital city, Jerusalem, was captured by the Babylonians, King Nebuchadnezzar, and their capital city, Babylon, that one's a little easier, came and captured them, destroyed the temple, destroyed Jerusalem, took the people into exile. Prophets like Jeremiah and Isaiah talked about that was going to happen. Jeremiah had to live through it happening. Prophets like Daniel actually were in exile with the people, and then they returned, and guys like Zerubbabel and Ezra and Nehemiah came back to rebuild the temple, the city, the people. And what had happened was there were people who were not taken into exile, who just had to fend for themselves tribally while all that was happening, and many of them intermarried with the Canaanites, the other tribes that were around then, while Judah was in exile. And then when the Judahites came back under the reign of Cyrus and Darius and Xerxes, these are now Persian kings. I know it gets confusing. Assyria, Babylon, Persia. The Persian kings let them go back and rebuild, and a lot of those returning Judahites intermarried as well. And so now you have these kind of half Jewish people, and they all kind of took up residency in the region of Samaria, which is now a region, not just a city, and they became known as the Samaritans. And they didn't get along very well with the people who had followed Ezra and Nehemiah and were trying to reform the unity of the people of God. And that's why when Jesus shows up on the scene, the region of Samaria is between Galilee and Jerusalem. And so when Jesus was doing his travels, a lot of people just go around. But Jesus is like, no, we're just going to go right through and actually talk to Samaritans. And wouldn't it be great if I told a story where the Samaritan was the hero and the priests and Levites were not? And that's the parable, of the Good Samaritan. But that's how Samaria, the capital city of the northern kingdom of Israel in the divided kingdom era, is different than the Samaria region in the New Testament. And now and that is at least half the battle. Speaking of battles, we have a battle coming up this Sunday. But in between Ahab's defeat of Ben-Hadad from Syria in chapter 20 and the battle that's coming in chapter 22, we have this interlude, which we talked about last Sunday, which was Naboth's vineyard. And Naboth's vineyard was next door to the palace that was in Jezreel, which is close to Samaria, the city. And Jezreel is where the palace was, kind of the summer home. And Ahab wanted the vineyard and kind of pouted about it. But Jezebel said, "You're the king. Get up." And some really great connections that I tried to make. Some I forgot in the first service. So if you were here first service or watched online, you didn't hear the connection of Ahab looking out his window and seeing his neighbor has something that he wants and he's willing to kill for it, or at least Jezebel's willing to kill for it. Very reminiscent to another king who looked out his window and saw what his neighbor had and decided, I want that and I'm willing to kill for it. And of course, that being David with Bathsheba. And I tried to make the point that Ahab would have known the David-Bathsheba tale. He would have known. I don't know how, I didn't do the math on how many generations separated David and Ahab, but it was still close enough historically and in the historical understanding of the people that Ahab absolutely would have known about David and Bathsheba and never connected the dots of, now I'm a king looking out my window and I want what's there. And, we're going to set up a guy to be killed so that I can get it. It didn't work well for David and it didn't work well for Ahab because obviously God knows. And that's why I think God wants that story there. A lot of parallels to other things in this Naboth's vineyard story. Like the angel who feeds Elijah and says, arise and eat. When Jezebel finds Ahab all pouty, she's like, Ahab, arise and eat. I will take care of you. See? It's like poetry. It rhymes. Anyway, so that's what we talked about. This coming week is going to be super fun. We get to talk about Ahab and the king from the south, from Jerusalem, the southern kingdom king, a guy you might have heard of named Jehoshaphat. I don't think he jumps in this story, but he is a piece of work as well. He's kind of the comic relief to Ahab being the villain. And it's going to be a fun story to cover this week and learn about what God's sovereignty looks like in the life of Ahab. And that'll be cool. Other things coming up for your update needs. Next week, Friday. That's February 16th. So after all of your Valentine's Day activities, that Friday, men are invited here to Grace Church at 6:30 for a awesome, fun game night. I'm assuming some of you are board game geeks like myself, because I've played board games with the men of this church several times. So I know how much fun those kind of epic games can be. We will have a couple of those running. Some of you are like, I don't think I want to do one of those. That'll take forever. We'll have simple games going on as well, probably some card games going on, some just fun ways to connect with people across the table. That's the idea. 6:30 next Friday. Now, if you are a lady, on Saturday the 17th, there is going to be a women's event called Healing Hearts. And this is a woman in our area who does artwork that processes some internal thoughts and emotions and spiritual depth. And it's going to be awesome. And it's not just for women, but the women's ministry is putting it on. That's going to be 2 to 4 that Saturday, the 17th of February. So back to back, men's event on Friday, women's event on Saturday. But the women's event's open to anybody. And I like the idea. We're being intentional around here of bringing more creativity to bear and more of the kind of other half of the brain way of processing the Lord and processing our faith. We are certainly people of the word here, and we're people of study and thinking, but also God made us to be feeling and emotional creatures. And that's part of being made in his image. So yes, we worry and are concerned about developing how we think, but also we need to focus in on how we feel, and that's part of our journey towards connecting with the Lord. And I know a lot of people here at Grace Church are more the engineer types, but we also have poets and artists and painters and musicians. And we're going to lean into that a little bit here with this women's event next week. So you won't want to miss that. Sermon series and some podcast stuff and some signups and giving is always available through the app. So don't hesitate if you have not downloaded that. That's also how we're going to get announcements about inclement weather. Clementine, my darling Clementine. And anyway, that's how we're going to end today. I haven't figured out a sign off yet on how we're going to end these videos, but eventually I'll figure out how to say goodbye. Until then,